Alrighty, so we are here now for our second half of our ChatGPT debate. In this live stream, we are going to be debating ChatGPT on what the strongest tornado to ever scrape the surface of the Earth was. This is for just to clarify here. Whenever we say strongest tornado of all time, we mean strongest estimate of a surface level 3-second or longer wind gust. By surface level, we mean anywhere between 0 and 50 feet. Again, obviously, the wind gust has to be 3 seconds or longer. It cannot be instantaneous. We are going to be debating ChatGPT on what it thinks is the strongest tornado of all time with that, what's the word? It's not coming to my mind. That criteria. And we're going to be seeing if we can outsmart it. A lot of you guys complained last time that it was just, flat out agreeing with me every time that I brought up a good point. And we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen this time. But I hope you guys are having a good day. God bless all you guys. How's it going, everybody? What's up, Mr. Twister, Camp, Kevin, Ezondas, Dasani, Dahani, not Dasani. I've got some Dasani right here. That's what made me think about it. But Jog, how's it going, everybody? Again, this is going to be a historic. No, it's going to be a fun debate, hopefully. And maybe we can change the mind of the AI. Maybe we can't. Again, we're going to make sure, and we're going to ask it to not hold back. It has to go all out. We're going to try to make sure that it does not just, oh, you were right, I guess I was wrong. We're going to make sure that it doesn't just say that I'm right whenever I ask it if I'm right. We are going to make sure that it does not hold back this time. Now, again, I have not done any research on what it claims to be the strongest tornado of all time. I have no prior knowledge as to what it's going to give me, so it's not like it's not like I'm Batman with prep time for this debate. The OGs will get that joke. What's going on, WX Clips? You can probably clip a lot of moments from this. Anyways, how's it going, Cyclone Chronicles? Dude, Jesse was glazing you the other day, just so you know. But yeah. I mean, the stream's already over. It was Lake City. I mean, we already know. Yeah. Lake City was actually EF6, so we don't need to do this. You know how El Reno 2013 is the reasoning that we should have an EF6 rating added to the scale. Anyway, I think we're done goofing around. I think we're ready. I really do. So, let's just do it. I think we're ready to go. I mean, there's not much else to it. If you are new here, make sure to like and subscribe. And let's go. Hello, ChatGPT. Today I'm going to be having you be, once again, my debate partner on the topic of what was the strongest tornado to ever touch down anywhere in the United States in recorded history. The criteria for the quote-unquote strongest objectification, if that is a word, is going to be the maximum 3-second or longer wind gusts in terms of speed. So, for example, this has to be a surface-level wind gust between 0 and 50 feet up into the atmosphere, and it has to be what you think. You know what? No, I don't like how I'm wording this. We're gonna restart. That was bad. I need to lock in. I don't know what that was. Okay. No, Jesse was not glazing you. Jesse was glazing somebody else, Mr. Twister. All right. Let's do this again. Okay, I don't know how to phrase this, because all it's gonna do is give me down measurements. Okay. Hello, ChatGPT. Today you will be my debate partner on the topic, what was the strongest tornado to ever touch down anywhere in the United States in recorded history. I want you to use your best estimations based off of radar data. You can use Dow data. You can use damage that was found, take into account movement speed, whatever you need to do any kind of research with any sort of plausibility to the feats of that tornado. I want to note that the criteria for the quote-unquote strongest tornado of all time qualification should come from maximum peak peak 3-second gust in terms of speed, and it has to come at the surface level between 0 and 50 feet up into the atmosphere. Again, this gust has to be longer than 3 seconds, and it doesn't have to be like a specific gust, but it has to be a tornado that you think would be able to produce a gust that strong. So I'm going to be taking the position that the tornado that is the strongest of all time by that criteria is the Smithville, Mississippi tornado. I want you to come up with whatever you think was, and I want you to debate me on it, and I want you to go all out. I do not want you to hold back and just say that I was right, even whenever you don't think I was. If you really feel backed into a corner where there's no logical way out, then you may concede the argument, but outside of that, I want you to try to refute my points. I want you to go all out in a respectful manner. I think that pretty much clears it up. So are you ready?
All right, I'm ready. This is going to be fun. So you're taking the Smithville, Mississippi tornado from 2011, which is definitely a solid contender. I'll pick the Bridge Creek Moore tornado from May 3rd, 1999 in Oklahoma. That tornado is famous for some of the highest wind speeds ever recorded by Doppler on wheels. So let's see where this debate takes us.
All right. Let's go ahead and get right into it. I'll go ahead and start by making my case of why the Smithville, Mississippi tornado was the strongest by that criteria that I said. Obviously, you know this, but the Smithville, Mississippi tornado had a rapid northeast motion speed that hardly any other F5 or EF5 tornadoes have ever seen, and it still caused extremely catastrophic damage all throughout the community on the northeast side of Smithville, and then eventually making its way off to the east of Smithville. Again, this tornado had some of the most intense damage ever seen in Mississippi state history, which is obviously, right in there in Dixie Alley. Again, this tornado was able to do all that while maintaining this rapid motion speed, so it had less time to inflict that damage. So I just can't imagine what these 3-second wind gusts looked like with the Smithville tornado. They had to have been incredibly high. So that's my point for Smithville. I want you to go ahead and give your case for Bridge Creek Moore.
All right, so the Bridge Creek Moore tornado from 1999 is famous for holding the record for the highest wind speed ever measured on Earth. The Doppler on wheels.
No, go ahead, sorry.
No worries. So the Doppler on wheels recorded a wind speed of about 301 miles per hour at around 100 feet above the ground. Now, even though that's a bit higher than the 50 feet that you mentioned, it still gives us a really good idea of the incredible wind speeds that were happening near the surface. And the damage from that tornado was absolutely catastrophic, with a lot of homes being completely swept away and debris being carried for miles. So I think it definitely makes for a strong contender in this debate.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to ask you something. Was the damage seen with the Bridge Creek Moore tornado on par or more intense than what was seen with the Smithville, Mississippi tornado? Because in my opinion, I would say no. I think that at least in terms of not contextual, but in terms of structural damage, I don't think that things were quite as impressive. Now, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado did have a few feats that things like Smithville couldn't quite live up to, like entirely debarked trees. I suppose Smithville probably had a few instances of that, but it was not likely nearly as intense. However, again, you have to note that the Smithville tornado moved far faster than the Bridge Creek Moore tornado did, and it was still able to inflict the same amount of damage. So I really think that the structural damage with the Smithville tornado was more impressive, and it was moving at a faster speed. Now, obviously, it is hard to pinpoint down to, the specific houses in terms of the address that had the most intense damage, but there were obviously several structures, they weren't even just houses, but several structures in general that took a clean hit head-on from this beastly tornado and ended up getting completely wiped out, even with the tornado moving northeast at 65 to 70 miles an hour at times. This tornado was able to rip gravestones at a cemetery. It was a very, very monstrous tornado. So in my opinion, the damage is just a little bit more impressive, and again, Bridge Creek Moore only moved at about half the speed, so it had around twice as much time to inflict damage, and in my opinion, the damage is not nearly twice as impressive. Now, I know that's not technically how you would work out that math, but anyway, that would be my rebuttal, so go ahead and refute those points.
You definitely bring up a good point about the speed of the Smithville tornado. It was moving super fast, which is really impressive considering how much damage it still managed to do. But with the Bridge Creek Moore tornado, even though it might not have been moving as quickly, the sheer intensity of those winds and the level of destruction it caused, is still kind of unparalleled. It literally holds the record for the highest wind speed ever recorded, and it did cause complete destruction in many areas, just like Smithfield did. So I think that it's a really close call, and it definitely depends on what criteria you're focusing on.
So you mentioned that Birch Creek Moor had the highest wind gusts recorded of all time. Obviously, that was on Doppler on wheels data, but there wasn't a Doppler on wheel recorded gust for the Smithville tornado because there were no Doppler on wheels on the actual tornado. So it's kind of hard to sit here and say that Bridge Creek Moor was more intense based off of Dow data because Smithville legitimately didn't have any Dow data associated with it. In addition to that, again, obviously Bridge Creek Moor caused more intense damage perhaps at points than the Smithville tornado, but it also had a much longer track. And again, obviously that Dow gust was highly elevated. I think at the surface, if we're taking into account surface gusts, in my opinion, I still think that a 3-second gust would probably have to go to Smithville again. Just moving at twice the speed really does make it quite a bit more impressive in my opinion. Do you have any specific structures during the Bridge Creek Moor tornado that you think provide a good help in terms of the structural evidence for the intensity of the tornado?
That's a fair point about the Doppler on wheels data. We do have to rely on the measurements that were taken, and it's true that not every tornado gets that kind of coverage. As for specific structures in the Bridge Creek Moor tornado, there were quite a few homes that were completely swept away down to the foundation. There was also a concrete slab that had ankle bolts pulled out, which is pretty rare and shows just how intense that wind was at the surface. But I totally get your point about the Smithfield tornado potentially having equally intense winds. It just didn't have the same kind of data collection on it. So it's definitely a fun debate to have.
Okay, so I want to ask you something else. Were there not any homes during the Smithfield tornado that were anchor bolted down to the ground that had their anchor bolts removed?
From what we know about the Smithfield tornado, there were definitely some homes that were completely wiped off their foundations as well. And in some cases, the anchor bolts did get pulled out or bent, showing that the winds were strong enough to cause that level of destruction. So, in that sense, both tornadoes really do share some similar levels of damage, and it just makes it even more interesting to compare them. They both were incredibly intense and left behind some jaw dropping destruction.
Can you give me a couple of the reasons that you think that Bridge Creek Moor edges out Smithville in terms of intensity?
Sure. One of the big reasons is definitely that measured wind speed of 301 miles per hour, which is a record that still stands. That gives us a concrete number to go off of, even though it's a bit higher than the surface level. Also, the Bridge Creek Moor tornado had a really long track and maintained its intensity for quite a while, which allowed it to cause widespread destruction over a large area. And another thing is that, it had that EF5 rating for a long portion of its path, which just shows how powerful it was. So those are some of the reasons I think Bridge Creek Moor edges out just a little bit in terms of intensity.
I want to ask you something about that Dow measurement. Again, we already stated that obviously Smithfield didn't have any Dow data associated with it, but also I wanted to know Dow data back in 1999, was it not far less advanced and a little bit less reliable because of that factoring the Bridge Creek Moor tornado?
That's definitely something to consider. The Doppler on wheels technology in 1999 was still pretty new and has definitely improved a lot since then. So while that 301 mile per hour measurement is impressive, there is always a chance that with more modern technology, we might get a slightly different reading or even a more accurate one. So it does add a bit of uncertainty to that measurement. And it's a good point that the technology at the time might not have been as precise as it is today. So that definitely factors into the comparison.
So, we already went over movement speed. Do you think that movement speed in general would play a huge role overall in the destruction that a tornado causes? Because there have been many, many points of contention across the WX, that being the weather community, especially on the X/Twitter platform recently, about the idea that perhaps, momentum isn't quite as important as we once thought. How do you feel about that, staying in the realm of the debate, but I'm just kind of curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic in the weather community. Movement speed can influence how long a tornado is over a particular area, which can affect the amount of damage. But the intensity of the winds themselves and the overall structure of the tornado probably play a bigger role. A slower moving tornado can cause more prolonged damage in one spot, while a fast-moving one like Smithville can still.
No, keep going. Sorry.
No worries at all. So yeah, in short, movement speed definitely has an impact, but it's really the wind intensity and the tornado's overall structure and how it interacts with the environment that.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. I was just going to say that it's really a combination of factors, and movement speed is just one of them. But both the Smithville and Bridge Creek Moore tornadoes had their own unique characteristics that made them incredibly intense and historic in their own ways.
So again, it kind of seems like you're just concluding with me on the point that maybe they were similar. I really want you to fight hard. If it is logically conclusive that it is a possibility that the Bridge Creek Moore tornado had a higher 3-second wind gust at the surface level than Smithville, I want you to find another reason to fight for that so that we can continue this lively debate.
Absolutely. Let's keep it lively. Another strong point in favor of the Bridge Creek Moore tornado would be the sheer scope and consistency of the EF5 damage along its path. It wasn't just a single point of intense damage, it maintained that intensity over a long stretch, causing widespread devastation. That consistency might indicate that the tornado had a very stable and incredibly intense circulation at the surface for a longer period, which could suggest that those 3-second gusts at the surface were more consistently extreme. So that would be another angle to consider.
But do those two things always correlate?
Not necessarily. A tornado can have consistent damage without always having the absolute peak wind gusts at every single point. There are a lot of variables that can come into play, like local terrain, the structure of the buildings, and subtle changes in the tornado itself. So while consistency of damage is a good indicator of intensity, it's not always a direct correlation to having the absolute highest wind gusts at all times. It definitely keeps things interesting for sure.
Right, so we've come to the conclusion that obviously Smithville moved quite a bit faster than Bridge Creek Moore. I do want your straight up opinion though. Do you think that just in general, without taking any other factors into play, which tornado had more impressive damage associated with it, the Smithville tornado or the Bridge Creek Moore tornado?
That's a tough call. Both were incredibly impressive in their own right, but if I had to pick one, I'd lean slightly towards the Bridge Creek Moore tornado just because of that record-breaking wind measurement and the widespread, consistent EF5 damage over such a long path. But honestly, Smithville was absolutely phenomenal too, and I can totally see the argument in its favor.
So, again, if it's possible, make a logically conclusive point once more. I need something else. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a specific structure that Bridge Creek Moore that puts it over the top, if it is, something with the general radar data, doesn't even just have to be the Doppler on wheels radar data, literally anything. Just give me another reason, another logically stable reason at least, that the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was more intense, likely, in your opinion, than the Smithville tornado.
All right, another factor in favor of the Bridge Creek Moore tornado could be the debris loading and the distance that debris was carried. The Bridge Creek Moore tornado was known for lofting really heavy debris and carrying it miles away, and that can be an indicator of the tornado strength and how powerful those winds were at the surface. So that could be another piece of evidence that suggests that Bridge Creek Moore might have had the edge in terms of intensity.
I ask you though, did the Smithville tornado not have a similar feat with its cars?
Yes, absolutely. The Smithville tornado did have some incredible feats as well, like the way it tossed cars and even large vehicles. Both tornadoes definitely showed how intense they were by lifting and throwing really heavy objects. So it just goes to show how amazing and powerful both of these tornadoes were.
Right. So, would you say that the feat of the Smithville tornado throwing the cars for around a half mile or was more impressive than Bridge Creek Moore's debris loading, or was it less impressive?
I think they're both impressive in their own ways. The Smithville tornado tossing cars for that distance is definitely a jaw-dropping feat, and it shows just how intense those winds were. On the other hand, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado ability to lift really heavy debris and carry it for miles is also pretty astounding. It's kind of like comparing apple and oranges in a way, but both feats definitely highlight the incredible power of each tornado.
Okay, but if you had to pick one, which would you choose?
If I had to pick one, I might lean slightly towards the Bridge Creek Moore tornado just because of that record-breaking wind measurement and the consistent intensity over such a long path. But honestly, it's such a close call, and both tornadoes were absolutely incredible in their own ways.
Right. So, what I'm not familiar. What exact piece do we know? Like what? How heavy the debris was that was thrown with the Bridge Creek Moore tornado? The heaviest pieces of debris, and again, obviously there were lots of little pieces of debris, pieces of home, shingles, trees, whatnot. But like saying like what is the heaviest piece of debris that was picked up and thrown at least 50 yards or more by the Bridge Creek tornado?
So one of the notable pieces of debris from the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was a large metal storage tank that was reportedly carried quite a distance. There were also instances of large vehicles, like full-size cars, being thrown significant distances. These heavier objects, when they get lofted and carried that far, really highlight just how powerful a tornado was. So those would be some of the heavier pieces that you know about.
Right, right. So, I'm being criticized in chat because I need to tell you not to feed your opinions off of online information. Is there any kind of information that you could get that wouldn't be online?
Well, most of the information I provide is based on what's documented and available online or from historical records. So it all kind of ties back to sources that are accessible, but I definitely do my best to keep it as objective as possible and focus on the facts that we know.
Right. So, back to the Bridge Creek Smithville debate. Again, I wanted to just recap what we've gone over so far. So the movement was faster with Smithville. You agreed that that plays a big role in the contextuals and structural damage of a tornado. You also mentioned that the debris loading was slightly more impressive with Bridge Creek Moore, but again, that is not necessarily the number one feature of strength because there were a lot more objects in the more metro area than there were during the rural area that Smithville hit. What else? We went over the Dow data not being readily available for the Smithville tornado and also being somewhat faulty for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado. What else should we go over whenever we're trying to dispute each other's points on a topic like this?
I think another good angle to consider is the overall impact on the communities, like how many structures were affected, the population density of the areas that were hit, and the overall damage costs. Also, considering how quickly the tornado intensified and the warning times for each event can be another factor. But I think we covered a lot of great points so far. So it's been a pretty thorough debate.
So why would the warning time play a difference in the estimated strength of these tornadoes?
Oh, the warning time itself wouldn't necessarily change the strength of a tornado, but it does play into how prepared a community might be and how many structures or people might be impacted. So it's more about the overall impact and how the tornado strength translate into damage and recovery rather than the actual wind speeds or intensity.
Right. So, outside of that, I mean, again, if it is logically possible to make a conclusive decision that Bridge Creek Moore is still stronger, I would like you to try to do that to the best of your ability, because viewers seem to be getting quite gnarly in the chat over you seemingly not doing that. Although I would like to note they didn't pay $20 for this, and it's not their channel. That was a sarcastic quote. I'm kidding, guys. Also, I just wanted to again just ask you to see if you could find any other piece of evidence?
Got it. One more thing that might tip the scale in favor of the Bridge Creek Moore tornado is the detailed engineering analysis that was done afterward. Some of the research indicated that the structural damage in certain areas showed that the wind speeds at the surface were likely at the very top of the EF5 range. So that kind of in-depth analysis gives us a bit more confidence that the Bridge Creek Moore tornado might have had those extreme wind speeds soar consistently.
I have a question for you. You said quote unquote very high end at the top of the EF5 range. What does that mean?
So the EF5 rating on the enhanced Vegeta scale is for tornadoes with wind speeds over 200 miles per hour. When we say high end, we mean that the wind speeds are not just barely over 200 miles per hour, but significantly over that threshold, potentially closer to the upper limits that we estimate for EF5 tornadoes, which can be around 300 miles per hour or so. So it's basically saying that the tornado's wind speeds were at the upper range of what we consider an EF5 tornado to be.
So, somebody in chat thinks that everything is all about them. I'm not going to call out every name, but they think it's all about them. I'm not dissing you, person in chat. You know who you are. That was just a sarcastic comment, but I guess we don't know how to take jokes here. That was also a joke. Calm down. Anyway, you mentioned the EF scale, EF5 rating being over 200 miles an hour. I ask you, was Bridge Creek Moore during the era where the EF/enhanced Fujita scale was introduced?
No, it actually wasn't. The Bridge Creek Moore tornado happened in 1999, and the enhanced Vegeta scale or EF scale was introduced later in 2007. So the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was actually rated on the original Vegeta scale, where an F5 rating was given for similar wind speeds over 261 miles per hour. So it was a slightly different rating system at that time.
Right. So, I mean, I guess the only other thing I would say is, again, it is hard to ignore the movement speed with the Smithville tornado. I mean, it's very hard to deny that if that Smithville tornado ended up, moving at, say, 30 or 40 miles an hour like Bridge Creek Moore did, in my opinion, it would have given us enough evidence to conclusively say that it was the strongest tornado of all time. I would also like to know, where does the El Reno Piedmont tornado fall into this conversation? I want you to rank the three. I think we're kind of done with the debate at this point. I want you to rank the three tornadoes of El Reno Piedmont, Bridge Creek Moore, and Smithville based off of their peak estimated 3-second or longer gusts at the surface level.
That's a fun challenge. If we're going strictly by peak estimated wind gusts at the surface, I'd probably rank them like this. First, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado would likely come out on top, mainly because of that 301 mile per hour Doppler on wheels measurement. Even though it was taken a bit above the surface, then I put the El Reno Piedmont tornado from 2013 next, because it was one of the largest tornadoes ever recorded and had some incredibly intense wind speeds near the surface. Finally, I'd place the Smithville tornado.
Okay, a few problems with what you just said. Number one, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado, you keep referring to the Dow measurement as 301 miles an hour. It was 321 miles an hour. And outside of that, the El Reno Piedmont tornado that I'm referring to was the 2011 tornado, not the 2013 2.6 mile wide tornado.
Got it. Thanks for that clarification. Yes, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado's wind speed was indeed measured at 301 miles per hour at that height, not 321, so my mistake there. And for the El Reno Piedmont tornado of 2011, that one was also incredibly intense, with some estimates suggesting wind speeds near the surface around that same range. So in that case, I'd still rank Bridge Creek Moore first, then probably El Reno Piedmont 2011 a close second, and Smithville third. But they're all truly remarkable tornadoes in their own right.
ChatGPT, I've got another question for you. Can you go ahead and pronounce the numbers 301 and 321 consecutively?
Sure. 301 and 321.
Okay. Now, what was the peak Dow measurement with the tornado that impacted the communities of Bridge Creek and Moore, Oklahoma. What was that Dow data recording at its peak?
The peak Doppler on wheels measurement for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was 301 miles per hour. That's the number that stands as the highest wind speed ever recorded for a tornado.
I'm sorry, you said 301 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The peak measurement for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was 301 miles per hour.
Yeah, where are you getting that information from?
That information comes from the official record and studies that were conducted after the tornado. The National Severe Storms Laboratory and other meteorological researchers documented that the Doppler on wheels recorded a wind speed of 301 miles per hour at about 100 feet above the ground during that tornado.
Are you sure it was 301 miles an hour and not 321 miles an hour?
I appreciate you catching that. You're right. The peak wind speed measured by the Doppler on wheels for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was actually 302 miles per hour. I apologize for that little mix up earlier. Thanks for pointing that out.
Sorry, what did you say it was?
The peak wind speed measured for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was 301 miles per hour. Thanks for your patience with that.
I'm sorry, what did you say it was?
I apologize for the confusion. The peak wind speed recorded for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado was 301 miles per hour.
ChatGPT, do you realize that you're obfuscating between the numbers 301, 302, and 321 interchangeably? I want you to give me a cold cut straight answer based off of the official data from the National Severe Storms Forecasting Center. And I want you to tell me, what was the peak estimated wind gust by the Bridge Creek Moore tornado in 1999 based off of Doppler on wheels data?
According to official records, the peak wind speed measured by the Doppler on wheels for the Bridge Creek Moore tornado in 1999 was 301 miles per hour.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad we got that all cleared up. If you have any more questions or anything else you'd like to chat about, just let me know.
ChatGPT, you know that drugs are bad for you, right?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. It's always best to stay healthy and safe. If there's anything else on your mind, I'm here to chat.
All right, I'm just making sure. Well, thank you for that lively and spirited debate that we had on the strongest tornado of all time. And I will talk to you later.
You're absolutely welcome. That was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed diving into all those tornado details with you. Feel free to reach out anytime. Take care, and talk to you later.
All right, see you, fatty. So a few things. A few things. A few things. A few things. We don't know how to pronounce the number 321. In its thing, it's writing out 321, but it keeps... Or no, it's writing out 301. I don't understand where they're getting that from. And then they changed it to 302 when I told you it was 321. Outside of that, I just think that ChatGPT is not necessarily ready for debating points. I think that tools like Perplexity AI and Grok even... I know Grok didn't have very good logic whenever we debated it, but if you get the, plus version or whatever, the flip, then it is quite a bit better. And then, Outside of that, what else? Yeah, Kevin, you asked me to tell it to get information that wasn't from online. Can you give me a piece of information about weather knowledge that you found that's not online, that you can't find online at all? Um, I mean, I don't know what you wanted me to do there. Also, I didn't tell it to always keep its side. I told it to change whenever it cannot find a logically conclusive piece of evidence to dispute my point. Why don't we discuss the oil rig situation with El Reno Piedmont? There's not a lot to discuss other than, subvorts. Subvorts hit big thing go down. Um, I mean, I don't know what else. I mean, if you want to dive into it, that's fine. But I don't know what else we can talk about. I don't know, bro. Somebody came in here. I don't even remember who it was. Was that you? Somebody said something about y'all doing your project, and the only conclusion you came to was that it was from multiple subvorts. Was that him that came in here? I don't think he came into the stream. By the way, enhanced risk is now in place for our North Dakota event today. I wouldn't bet on a very significant tornado threat associated with this just due to the lack of good storm mode for a prolonged period of time. But I'd say a couple QLCS tornadoes can't be ruled out. I will say ARRR on recent runs has been liking the idea of a rogue supercell traveling towards the North Dakota Canadian border. Um, and I think that could potentially create a localized enhanced corridor of a tornadic potential. But I mean, you get that far north, and by that time of night, your instability values start to drop. So Roman blamed debris loading in Smithville and debris hitting homes. Well, I don't understand how that would be. First of all, is there conclusive evidence that that happened at all? And second of all, if there is, it is not the perpetrator of all of the damage that we saw, if that was the argument. That's kind of wild. Um, but yeah. I look like a couch potato. Anyway. See, the only instance of that was like, this destroyed the entire home because of debris loading, and that I know of anyway was Oakfield. You know. What else? Oh yeah, guys, if you're on Twitter or really any kind of social media relating to the WX community at all, you already know this. And you probably know what I'm about to say, but this is huge, huge news for the future of weather models and forecasting as we know it. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm scared. You guys probably know what I'm talking about, but the NAM 3 kilometer model, unfortunately, is going to be put to sleep in 2026. And RRFS, the Rapid Refreshing Forecasting System, is going to be taking over. Now, there are so many problems I have with this. I think that the RRFS isn't advanced enough. I think that the NAM model does a perfectly good job as it is. I mean, sure, it shoots out fantasy runs sometimes, but that's the fun in it. I mean, there's so many problems with just getting rid of the NAM model to replace it with the RRFS. I don't understand why we're doing that. I mean, I guess there's not a lot we can do about it. Sitting here and complaining about it isn't going to change anything. But like that is crazy to me. It is crazy to me. It did predict April 2nd, and that's why everybody says that it's the king of weather models. But it's also worth noting that it does that for legitimately every event. So, I mean, it's kind of wild. It is sad to see the NAM go. Guys, the NAM has given us 800 millibar hurricanes, backwards moving derechos. Those are just things that we can't see on the RRFS. We just can't see it. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but I don't understand. Um, but I thought that was crazy when I heard the news. No, it's gone in 2026, Storm Chaser 575. By the way, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've done a piece of content. I've kind of been dealing with some personal stuff the past few days, but we chillin'. Hopefully I have a new members only video for all you members out there either tonight or tomorrow. I don't know what else there's to say. See, Kevin, I don't think that that's going to affect me, because the limit's 13, right? And whenever I first started streaming, even though I wasn't, it thought I was under 13. What happens is it sends you a notification that your account's going to get deleted in 2 weeks if you don't show a valid form of identification. So my mom put her ID in there, WMom. This is not a joke. If my mother didn't put her ID into that slot, like 2 years ago, we would not have the Davis Does Weather channel today. So WMom in the chat. WMom in the chat. Also, I can't gift new memberships for 3 more days for free. How's it going, Elaine? But yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We're not going to end off yet, I don't think. I kind of want to yap with you guys. Mainly because I don't have anything else to do. But I appreciate all you guys for tuning in today. I'm wondering if YouTube didn't send out my notifications again because we didn't have very much viewership. But I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe this topic just isn't that interesting. Perhaps that's the problem. ChatGPT is too boring. This is the type of video where if I made it a year ago, or the type of stream where if I did this a year ago, I feel like it would blow up. But perhaps not today. Not today. Again, HRRR here is really liking the idea of a North Dakota wind fest tonight in the central portion of the state. I would also like to note South Dakota has an environment that nobody's mentioning. In fact, the 20Z run of the HRRR is finally starting to pick up on this. Let me go ahead and add a screen share up. We'll go ahead and just switch over to this. We do not have a PDS tornado warning. We do not. Okay. If we go ahead and go over to the HRRR model on the 20Z, again, it's got that rogue supercell there over Chamberlain, South Dakota. Now, arguably, the environment is more impressive over South Dakota than it is North Dakota. I mean, you've got yourself 4,500 to 5,000 in stability. You've got yourself a ridiculous amount of bulk shear within the first 6 kilometers of the atmosphere. We're sitting at, I guess, not ridiculous, but about 50 knots. Your SRH values, this is actually quite ridiculous. The areas that the supercells track over, obviously, you can't really take it for gospel too much just because they are obviously just going to be SRH bombs, but those areas that have the supercells tracking over them hit over 800 SRH in the 0 to 3 range. But even outside of that, I mean, we've still got, 350 to 400 SRH. I mean, this is a pretty impressive environment. You got your moisture content, certainly. You got dews into the mid-70s in southern South Dakota. Again, the main problem in South Dakota is going to be lack of confidence that storms will fire. I think if they do, we could have a serious problem along the I-90 corridor. So, if I were the SPC, here's how I would do this. I would actually take this 5% risk. Here's what I would do. I'd do a little 5% up here for our discrete rogue supercell at the, not just the HRRR, a couple models are painting. And then I'd also put a 5% down here in southeastern South Dakota. This is what I would do. I would get rid of this 5%. I think this is mainly going to be a big wind fest with maybe an isolated QLCS tornado, not necessarily supportive of a 5% tornado risk, in my opinion. So we'll see how things play out. The Davis's weather fall off is, it's been crazy lately. It really has. Every time I call it a bust now, it is not a bust. Let's just put it that way. Speaking of which, I don't understand. I still see people on Twitter moping that March 15th busted. First of all, it didn't. Second of all, if it did, why are you complaining about that? If the bust is a catastrophic tornado outbreak that kills half a dozen people and brings intense to violent tornadoes to pretty much the entirety of the southern half of Mississippi and the southern half of Alabama, for that matter, as well, why did you want things to be... I mean, I know it's that classic case of somebody playing the moral high ground in this situation, but I just don't understand. I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, I guess I don't understand. Greenfield or Marion? In what context? What are you asking? But yeah, I don't understand. I don't. I actually think that Tylertown is probably the second most forgotten violent tornado of the year. The most forgotten one, nobody has talked about this since it happened, and it was the longest tracking tornado since Mayfield. Elko, 56, Franklin, Ash Flat, through Fair Dealing, Missouri, along the Arkansas-Missouri state line. That is ridiculous. I don't think Greenfield was an EF5 contender. Which was stronger? Was that a serious question? I'm sorry, that was rude. Seriously, is that a serious question, though? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. That's the one that hit you. Yeah, I remember you talking about that. I hope you're doing okay. I mean, this is, again, March 14th is a night that will go down as potentially, I don't want to say outbreak of the decade, but it is one of them. I mean, it's not often that you're going to see a tornado outbreak in early March that brings you, 50 tornadoes, with a dozen of them being intense to violent, one of them being nearly an EF5 drought buster. I mean, you're not going to see this often. Yeah, the Pi Day tornado outbreak. But yeah, I don't, it will go down as potentially one of the contenders for outbreak of the decade. Obviously, you have to throw December 10th in that category. May 16th of this year, you have to throw March 31st in there. But this event was, this was something else. A lot of people forget about the humanitarian impacts of this from this tornado outbreak. Not only was this a outbreak that caused just unreal destruction to the communities it impacted, but it killed 13 people. And then obviously the next day we had March 15th, which also ended up killing 11 people. This was a legitimate catastrophe. And again, those were just the impacts from the tornadoes of the event. Overall, you had, 30 or 40 people that died in 2 days related to weather events. Which, it's sad. But, unfortunately, that's just one of those things where it happens every year. It does. And that doesn't make it any less devastating, but it is, it's just terrible to see. Tornado, bro, what? No, that's old. This is, the Wellfleet stream. Yeah. That's crazy. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. If we had a more populated area, I believe it would have been rated EF5. The damage is unbelievable, especially in the forest. Oh, yeah, I didn't, bro, I literally just switched it to this screen. Give me a break, bro. There are certainly a handful of tornadoes that obviously, would have gotten that EF5 intensity rating this year, similar to any year, if they had hit more populated areas. And I do believe that 56 Franklin was one of them. Which, that's another point of contention, and another reason that it's somewhat forgotten is nobody can decide on a name for this thing. I don't really like calling it 56. I don't think that we should. 56 was a community that was, first of all, an unincorporated community, and it's an area that only saw low-end EF3 inflicted damage. Franklin, on the other hand, although not hit head-on, that's where we had several of our EF4 DIs come in. So I don't know. I was just shocked. Some of the tornadoes that I was shocked that there wasn't a Torii for in recent history. Obviously, you have Greenfield that comes to mind. You've also got things that you wouldn't even think of, like the St. Louis tornado this year. I would have Tori'd that easily. And I was saying it should have gone Tori'd while it was on the ground. So it's not just me, sitting here answering a question after it happened. No. I really think that should have gone tornado emergency. I don't see why the Little Rock tornado in 2023 did if St. Louis didn't. I suppose there was a less lead time for the St. Louis tornado, but I still think it was enough whenever we saw that unreal correlation coefficient drop over like an 8-mile swath with, gate-to-gate shear of 200 miles an hour in the largest metro in the Midwest other than Chicago. I don't know what else. I guess just more lead time. Again, I don't want to be, Little Rock was a high-end EF3, it deserved the Torii. That's a bit of a stretch of an argument. What do you mean? I'm not saying Little Rock didn't, but I'm saying St. Louis definitely did. St. Louis, oh gosh, that voice crack was bad. St. Louis was also a high-end EF3. St. Louis is more populated than Little Rock. What else? Or I suppose it wasn't high-end EF3, it was more mid-range, but there were certainly plenty of mid-range EF3 DIs. I don't even think that's a hot take, Sam. I think that that's just a fact. See, Bloomington, Columbus, I would have issued one as well, but after the fact, I'm glad that they didn't, because the damage ended up being minimal. I suppose not minimal, but not nearly as bad as what the catastrophic radar picture presented. I mean, I think that Wellfleet was probably easily 200 plus. I will say the surveying job on it I was less than satisfied with, but what can you do? You know, um, got rated at low NDF2 intensity, which I thought was kind of crazy because we had reportedly ground scouring and violent tree debarking. Um, and that tree debarking is a fact. That's not a, you know, was it true? That is a fact. Yeah, there's your irrigation pivots flipped. I mean, people flame me for that, but I looked at it. You know, what I suppose Sullivan and perhaps Winchester, but like that really wasn't that ridiculous of a take if people had actually looked into it. The problem is people just think they know everything and they'll dive into a topic without doing the research first. Also, it's worth noting at this time last year we had 1,229 tornadoes. This year so far we had 1,230. One more, baby. You don't believe Marietta deserved an EF4 rating? I will be completely honest. The only one I looked at was the Dollar Tree. I know the other one got downgraded. But I can see it. I mean, it's just kind of textbook borderline EF4 intensity damage. I don't think it's the worst EF4 rating of all time. But if we actually take a look at it here, here you go. So again, this was, or excuse me, I always thought this was a Dollar General. I guess it's a Walmart. I mean, I don't know. Oh yeah, this is yeah, we should probably take this off. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely impossible to tour something like that because of the horrible radar coverage and poor reporting. Because not a lot of chasers went that far south for this event. I will say Holdenville, very unreal radar presentation. Like arguably the most unreal radar presentation of the night, perhaps with an exception for Sulphur, which I'm gonna be honest, Sulphur kind of overrated. Not gonna lie. That's gonna spark some controversy, but Sulphur is not overrated. Like I said, controversy. But I don't know. I will say, in my opinion, the strongest tornado of 2024 outside of Greenfield is Minden. That's just my opinion. The damage contextuals don't necessarily support it, but we had what was the estimate? I don't remember how they got that estimate. Hold on. Minden, Iowa tornado wind speed estimate. I don't think it was Dow. No, not off damage. Oh, it was Dow. Yeah, the Dow reading of 224 miles an hour. Minden overrated. Okay. What's up, Storm Chaser Brody? Hey, I heard we got a toxic community. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think. I think it'll be a tour watch camp. I'm pretty confident in that. I will say the Des Moines tornado on the night of the 26th actually was not talked about a whole heck of a lot, but at the time that was my most viewed stream ever, I believe, even though it was only like 20 minutes long. Yeah, it's really not. I mean, like, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't know. Um, I asked today on Twitter what was the most overrated tornado of 2025 outside of the obvious. We don't even have to say it. Um, that of which being Lake City. There, I said it. And a lot of people said Plevna, and I agree. Plevna, mad overhyped. Mad overhyped. We have nothing to support the idea that it was even 200 plus other than radar data. Which, keep in mind, if we go ahead and open up our good old trusted Radar Omega here, that's another point of controversy that I probably shouldn't say. If we look at Plevna, the radar coverage, it's not, I suppose it's not as terrible as I thought. I'll give you that. But it is not a hot take. It's not a hot take. Give me one piece of evidence that Plevna has other than the radar data. And, I mean, a lot of people were saying that it was going to be like the end of the drought. So, I mean, in that sense, it kind of has to be overrated. But then again, people say that about every single tornado of 2025. It's a big if. Inderland's the strongest tornado of the year? I just don't think that the contextual evidence is quite as much as people think. I mean, like, it's not the first time that we've seen a train derailed, guys. I mean, that's not meant to be, like, disrespectful in any way, but that of itself is really not enough to make me think that it was 200 plus. Which, I said this, I believe, a few weeks ago. I don't think we've had a single tornado get 225 mile per hour surface gusts so far this year. At least of 3 seconds or longer. Sam, you literally just stole. Okay. I keep voice cracking. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. 2025 has been weird. It has. Luckily, thank God my 2025 severe weather season forecast verified, because this is the first time I've done a long range forecast. At least for an entire year for severe weather. And it verified. I don't think it could have gone too much better. Not to toot my own horn, but which, I mean, perhaps I could have moved the well above average zone a little bit further north, but I don't see what else didn't play out, you know? Perhaps the Central Plains being in the slightly above average zone is a little meh, but oh no, yeah, 2018 sucked. It is widely known as the worst year for chasing of all time. Really, the only things you had were Marshalltown and Taylorville, and then you had the random EF4 in Canada, which even that was a point of controversy, rating it at EF4 intensity. But that's another story. The 2018 chase season was so bad. It was so bad. But if you don't like tornadoes, which most people don't, it was a pretty good year. Um, I'll tell you what was a good year for chasing. The OGs already know. 2016. Now, here's my question. 2016 or 2025? What's better for chasing? For chasing. 2016, I'd still say 2016, 2025, 2016 just for Dodge City. I mean, we had Wellfleet, which is basically the equivalent of Dodge City. Chapman, Dodge City, Katie Wingwood. Yeah. I mean, really the only thing that we have to support this year would be Wellfleet. And I'm sorry, guys, but our net is not the Omega Beautiful tornado that everybody claims it to be. It was a photogenic cone tornado. Miss Butterfly Love, how's it going? It has been a long time. Wow. I remember you from the December 28th outbreak and a couple other streams. No, yeah, he still said it's Tornado of the Year even after Wellfleet, and that blew my mind. Like, I don't want to poke fun at people, but that, like, blew my mind. I mean, it's obviously biased, but Outbreak people forget is April 28th, 2014. Was that also a high risk? I feel like it was. Yeah. Louisville, Mississippi. This was a high risk. I think so, anyway. Because obviously April 27th was a high risk. 2014, that is. Yes, April 27, 2011 was as well. I can't find the OG Outlook. Yeah. May 6, 2024 was not a bust. I agree with that. Oh my gosh, dude. The algorithm changes every day. It sucks. Thank you for staying tuned in, though. Last time you saw me, I probably was not in this room. Probably the most prolific Dixie outbreak since April 27th, and that still stands. I mean, I suppose I'd have to look into it further. I'm not authorized to say much on the subject. That's something I will do. If I don't know anything about what I'm talking about, I just won't talk about it. Yeah, I don't think it was a bust. And I've argued that on Twitter several times. I think it was a significant underperformance. I don't think it was a bust. I think the second you get a violent tornado that slabs homes and kills people, it's not a bust anymore. And in my opinion, it's a little disrespectful to call it one. Which, again, I don't want to play the moral high ground and say, oh, you're bad because you say that. Because the reality is the people affected by this, they don't care. They do not care. Everybody's like, oh, that's so insensitive to the people affected. They do not care at all. Now, is it helpful to those people? No. But they don't care, guys. Now, whenever it's a deadly tornado, that's a little different. It's a little bit different. Should Janesville have been EF3? In my opinion, no. But you could make the argument for it. And based off of radar imagery, I thought it would be. Definitely a very interesting story behind the Janesville tornado, though. The first ever Wisconsin February tornado. Or excuse me, actually the second ever, just because the first ever was on the same day in the same outbreak. But high-end EF2 tore through Evansville, Albion, and the north side of Janesville. I assume this is the Janesville you're referring to, unless you're talking about Janesville over the summer, which, in that case, I would have to disagree. What's up, Pete? Yeah. Yeah, the February tornado was a very weird case that I don't know if we're going to see again in our generation, guys. I mean, sure, we're going to see more tornadoes in Wisconsin in February in our lifetimes, but not a significant, intense, strong one like that. I almost said violent. That would be a stretch to call it violent, obviously, but also ignore my voice crack. This is also one day before my birthday. Fun fact. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it is. I think it's properly rated, in my opinion. Um, Andover 2022 is overhyped. See, I feel like now we're just attention farming. That's what I think. Let me know if I'm wrong. That's what I think. Let's see. Do they really not have? They don't have Janesville on Chase Archive? I mean, realistically, Andover. What's up, Vincent? Realistically, Andover 2022 was 200 plus higher up in the atmosphere. Um, the reason for my post from earlier on X is mostly Capybara, but he has been more chill recently. Yikes. Kevin, just cover your ears. Uh, um, anyway, yeah. What is this? July 5th, London, Kentucky, shelf cloud. That is crazy work. They foreshadowed it. Um, I'm not gonna name any names, and again, I don't want to like bully anybody. That's not my intention here. But somebody was arguing that the Sullivan tornado had wind gusts of 281 miles per hour. Um, so yeah, I mean that's just people's opinions, I guess. Um, but I don't know. I will say the tornado that fascinates me most out of the 2025 event was definitely Bakersfield. Um, I mean, I don't like arguably some of the most impressive radar imagery of the year. Also, Bakersfield was I'd consider it to be the pinnacle of the prime environment for March 14th. Um, I mean, perhaps you could have had better instability profiles, but I mean, you've got 1,000 cape. Whenever you've got 1,000 cape, that's not normally going to be enough for a violent tornado threat, but combine that with 77 knots of shear and 850 SRH, you got something. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're doing that now. That's cool. Rap underdid instability that day. I don't think so. At least not to a high degree. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know why, but he kept saying that Parkersburg was the strongest EF5 tornado of all time. And I didn't want to argue with him, but I guess I'm just curious where he's getting that from. Yes, the meteor impact was viewed from Georgia and South Carolina. One of the crazier things that we've seen in a while. Definitely very unexpected, or at least I didn't know it was coming. I don't think anybody did, but hot take London was that's not a hot take. How is that a hot take? That is the coldest take I think we've seen all stream. I was thinking about doing a stream where we just have you guys go over your hot takes. Calling him AMS is crazy work. But anyway, that's good. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I say when I have nothing to talk about. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't. I don't think the Bridge Creek Moor environment was that impressive. And it's not just because I clicked on this sounding just now. I mean, don't get me wrong. It supported a violent tornado threat. It did. But I don't see how we got one of the strongest tornadoes of all time from that outbreak. The photograph was textbook. That's for sure. But I don't know, man. I've looked at the environment though, and it's not that much more impressive. Weatherfront is uber hype, bro. I don't understand why everybody and their mom needs a weather app now. Um, I don't get it. I just don't. So, something I do want to look at. I will tell you, I have not looked too much at the Greenfield environment, and I didn't look at it too much whenever it happened. At that point, I was more so reliant on models' reflectivity and SPC outlooks. Um, okay, yeah. I mean, again, Greenfield was helped heavily by mergers, obviously, but very, very gnarly sounding. I will say your effective layer's thermal relativity could be a bit more impressive, but what a photograph. um, I mean, you've just got like 10,000 knots of wind shear. Definitely not just 67. But you got 4,000 surface cape. You've got 200 to 303 cape. That is pretty incredible. Your downdraft cape at 848. Your lapse rates sitting between 6.5 to 8. Yeah, I mean, definitely quite an environment. What did Cookville's environment look like? I really haven't looked too much at Cookville either. Oh, yes, I have. Yeah. You've got this crazy elongated photograph with these amazing shear profiles. Um, Again, I suppose the only reason they didn't have the 2% that far east would likely be due to issues in convection type, and then also instability was quite poor. It's hard to justify anything higher than a 2% whenever you've got 500 surface cape. I mean, pretty incredible shear and SRH values, though. Davis needs his glasses put on. Well, I mean, to be fair, um, I feel like at this point, what are you gonna do that's better at within split second sounding finding than Chase Archive? It's just the most convenient, and it's really not as bad as you're saying. I'm just gonna be quite brutally honest there. But let's see. So I've looked at Smithville, the sounding that they have attached on here before. I don't like. I used to think that April 27th overperformed. I don't necessarily think it did. I don't think that we've seen an environment as impressive as April 27th since April 27th. Like, you don't see 1,000 SRH and 80 knots of shear. You just don't. And everybody on March 15th was trying to say that the environment was April 27th like. And I'm sitting here thinking you clearly haven't looked at the environment on April 27th. You've got, instead of 80 knots of shear on the 0 to 6, you got 65 knots. Instead of 1,000 SRH, you've got 600. Instead of 4,000 cape, you've got 2,500. Your lapse rates are poor. You also had a more non-discrete storm mode. Also, the what's the word I'm looking for? The mesoscale features were not as impressive. Obviously, you had that large MCS in the morning time hours of April 27th. See severe weather. Hot take. April 27th would have been worse than April 3rd had the morning convection in the north, up in the north in the 15 hatch not killed it. Better outflow boundaries amid an extremely volatile environment from central Alabama to northeast Kentucky. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I feel like that's a pretty fair assessment. I don't necessarily think that's a hot take, I guess. I mean, obviously, you can't look at a sounding from April 3rd on here. Can you? You can. Wow. I did not expect that. I mean, again, obviously, it's going to be slightly inaccurate because it's ERA 5, which brought you that inaccurate Bridge Creek Moor sounding earlier. And then this is even further back in time, but still worth noting. 82 knots a shear at the 0 to 6. Like, I just... It's crazy. It really is. I really haven't looked too much at the April 3rd, 1974 setup. I've not gone that in depth. So 91 knots of 0 to 6 in southern Indiana. Sounds like fun. Again, guys, this is 0 to 6 shear. This is within the first 6 kilometers of the atmosphere. Name another setup that has had 91 knots of shear 92 knots of shear at the 0 to 6. I don't know if you can. I'm confused why you put a rat emoji after that, Camp, but I'm sorry to hear that. I'll be praying for. So the NAM is one of the short-range models that we like to use for forecasting events, usually 2 to 4 days out. And they're going to be replacing it here pretty soon. Again, early 2026. So, quite sad to see it go, honestly. You know what's another environment that was just uncanny sheer? Rolling Fork. If you're actually looking in Rolling Fork, it's not exceptionally impressive. If we go to Tornado Archive, unfortunately we can't actually look at features like, specific lower level shear with Archive. But if we go over to the environment, turn on the winds at the 850 millibar level, just unnecessarily ridiculous. Again, this is at the 850 millibar level that we are dealing with 80 knots. At the 500 millibar level, if we were to go a little bit further out, I suppose it doesn't get quite as impressive as I thought, but again, across northern Mississippi and northern Alabama, where the event played out, we had around 100 knots at the 500 millibar level, which is very impressive for anybody not aware. We can't replace the NAM with the Oh my gosh, bro. Yo, Inverted Cell, aren't you the one that, weren't people, like, roasting your takes on the last ChatGPT stream? I wasn't really paying attention. Yeah, I cannot believe that we're actually reporting or replacing it. I didn't mean that in like a roasting way. Everybody was getting their takes shoved in their own faces. Um, Rip Nam. Do 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 do. See, here's what's weird. My face is perfectly lined up with my camera right now. Like, perfectly lined up with my... Oh, I guess it is on the... Actually, never mind. I'll shut up. How's it going, Sean? Hurricane season is cooked. It is so over. We're not seeing anything this year. It is so over. And people are going to get mad at me for saying that so early, but it is so over. Like, I don't think a lot of you guys understand how over it is. It's really quite scary. This is the time of year where we're supposed to be seeing GFS fantasy runs, and we've seen nothing. We usually have had 2 or 3 name storms at this point. We've had 1 name storm for like 12 hours in the North Atlantic. I'm aware, Kevin. Might be a crazy late season. See, here's the thing. Our Enzo phase is straight neutral. Everybody always wants to blame hurricane season on the Enzo phase. You can't blame it on the Enzo phase every year. And last year, because we were still in a neutral phase, but everybody thought we were going to go into a La Nina, and that's why everybody said last year's hurricane season was going to be historic. That is not why last year's hurricane season was historic. It really had nothing to do with the Enzo phase. I'm going to be quite honest. The Enzo phase plays a very little factor into hurricane season in the Atlantic. I'm just going to say it. And that makes people mad, but I mean, it's just true. Andrea wasn't even on most models, and yet it formed. Yeah, and it formed for like 4 hours. So here's your tropical storm, Andrea. Look at that. 2 days ago, Tropical Storm Andrea marks early 2025 hurricane season. That is ridiculous. That is the most misleading thing I think I've seen today. That is so dumb. That is the saddest thing I've ever seen. That is so sad. That is so dumb. In what universe? I don't understand how that makes any sense. So let's say in a hypothetical universe that Andrea actually did something, which keep in mind it didn't. It did literally nothing, and even if it did, it was in the North Atlantic. But even outside of that, we are not by any means early. Do you guys understand? 2024 had a late start. And yet, we still had tropical storm. What's it called? The A. Come on, you guys. You're gonna have to help me out. What was last year's Tropical Storm A? It was not Alex because it was a male. It was like Ernesto. No, that's E. Burlington. Alberto, yes. Tropical Storm Alberto developed earlier than Andrea this year did. And it was more intense. It was in an area that actually impacted people. And yet that was still a historically late start to hurricane season. Look at this. When does the first named storm in the Atlantic Ocean develop on average every year? It's going to give me like a range. It's going to be like late June. Yeah, June 20th. And again, Alberto was indeed, okay, it was June 20th, but shut up. This was June 27th, so it's late. We are not getting an early start to hurricane season. See ya, Brody. Yeah, I know, Kevin. I actually had some friends send me some videos. And then I got a little SWS myself. I got some members-only footage. So become a member. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Eastern Pacific's kind of been popping off this year, I'm not going to lie. Especially with Eric. Hurricane Eric was actually quite devastating. We had 23 fatalities, 28 injuries. There's still 2 people missing. Over 200 million in damages. Category 4 intensity. I mean, that was arguably the most devastating hurricane that portion of the world has seen since Otis, which it was only a year ago since Otis. So, I mean, Acapulco can really not get a break. But we could go through the entire names list for the Eastern Pacific this year. It's possible. Because, I mean, both GFS and Euro have the Eastern Pacific just spewing out low after low after low. And I believe even the Canadian's been picking up on this, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so. They really like the idea of this system second to the third, which is the 5090 disturbance, I believe. They like it becoming, say, a Category 1 Cat 2 hurricane. Low-end Cat 2 it would be, but... Does anybody know why Tropical Tidbits is loading in the hours weird? Anyway. The models, which area of interest? Because we literally just talked about the fact that they are for the Eastern Pacific one. And if you're referring to the one in the Gulf, I will tell you that it's a 20%. So... new HRRR 21Z run. Radar Omega still isn't coming in, but we can kind of see it here. Banning a little bit more of a discrete mode. If this were to happen, I would not rule out an isolated long-tracking tornado somewhere in north-central North Dakota. You have to keep in mind our instability out here is not quite as high as it is further south, but it's still enough. You're talking, 2,500 surface cape. Again, I mean, your shear is honestly pretty decent. you got 40 knots within the first 6 kilometers of the atmosphere, which, I mean, isn't incredible, but again, it's enough. Or, excuse me, I suppose that was actually not the right hour. That is my fault. We've got way more than 40 knots in the first 6. Let's go over to first 6. I don't know why people have to say that it's going to be the end of the drought every time we get a mid-range EF3 now, but people did it a lot for Enderlin, and I'll give you a hint. Everybody's favorite, the Lake City duo, was saying that. Not to put them on blast, but I don't want to just like be a channel that just like gossips and makes fun of people, you know. But what's the weather outlook for Arkansas tomorrow? Arkansas, we're kind of chilling. I think the main threat for tomorrow is going to come across portions of the upper Midwest still. I will say, obviously, you've got that general thunder risk, which is going to be a trend every single day. But if we were to take a look at, we'll do the NAM out of respect. Rest in peace, NAM. If we take a look at the NAM model here, again, I assume you're somewhere out here in northeast Arkansas, since you were talking about the Franklin tornado. You've kind of just got, again, your general clearing overnight, and then thunder showers and thunderstorms in the evening time hours. And again, they're going to be little pop-ups, so not everybody's going to get it. So it's going to be one of those days where, your weather.com says 20% chance of rain, but if that 20% happens, you're looking at a brief downpour, but a heavy downpour. Well, and that's why we can't use the RRFS to replace the NAM, because it does the most ridiculous overhyping. It's like NATOcast. Like, it's ridiculous. It's like saying, oh yeah, we're actually just going to get rid of the SPC's tornado probabilities and just start using NATOcast. Like, no, please don't. Also, 21ZH-RRR still has convection developing in southern South Dakota, which I maintain is an impressive setup. So we'll see. If it can take advantage of 4,500 Cape, that is an uptrend. My goodness. I mean, we could be looking at an isolated SIG tour in southern South Dakota if that were to play out somewhere near the Chamberlain area. I'm currently making a video documentary about the London Somerset tornado. Will come out very soon, and yes, it will be a premiere. W. I will say, not the John White that you guys are thinking of, but John White, YouTuber and Storm Chaser, did already do a doc on it. But he's like the only one that I've seen, so you should be chilling. That dude gets out these documentaries like a week after the event happens, and they're always just as good quality as all the others. But yeah, go subscribe to Sam. Go check out his documentary. Yes, White Weather. Yep, he's got like 10K subs on YouTube. 9.72, I suppose. He's been growing super fast. Like a month ago, he was at like 5K. And his St. Louis video did really well. And his London video. But yeah. It's a really smart strategy, as rather than making a video out of the entire outbreak, he can just make 5 separate videos of each individual tornado and get 5 times the publicity, which is actually really smart. And he can also get the opportunity to go more in depth on those tornadoes in that case. I have some last adjustments to do. It's a 12-minute video currently. It's very understandable the 1974 super outbreak took... What otherwise? I think I heard there was a tornado that week from east to west. Have you heard anything about that? Oh, sorry. Yes, you are referring to the Georgia tornado. Yes. So that tornado got rated at low end, or excuse me, it got rated at high end EF1 intensity. This was in southwest Georgia. This was a little baby that popped up on radar kind of lately warned, just because the velocities really weren't super impressive. And again, it got rated at high end EF1 intensity due to tree damage. I believe there was also a mobile home flipped, if I'm not crazy. I don't know. But rated at EF1 intensity with wind gusts up to 100 miles an hour. Luckily, no injuries or fatalities. It's very easy to get a deadly situation in a case like that, even with a tornado that weak, because there was a late warning time on it. And again, it did hit an area that had some structures that, aren't particularly well built. Is that common? It's not as rare as you would think for these summertime Dixie events. But in the grand scheme of things, no, that is not common, I would say. I'd say it's uncommon. That's the rarity level. What events would you want to cover from past years? If you're talking about like the past few years, oh my gosh, I almost just leaked it. I already have something in the works. What is... Jack's crashing out on me on Twitter again. Alright, anyway. I already have something in the works for the past few years. I really want to reveal the script. I do. Chat, if you guys can get this stream to 30 likes, if you guys can get this stream within the next 60 seconds, I will reveal what it is. Your time starts now. 30 likes, that's only 2 more. 60-second timer started now, and I will reveal publicly. I was going to make it a members only thing, but I will reveal publicly trailer, or not, I don't have a trailer ready, but the trailer, or not, I don't have a trailer ready, but covering. There we go. It only took you guys 20 seconds. You guys are amazing. God bless all y'all. My next tornado documentary, I have a script written now, but I'm not going to show it. My next tornado documentary is going to be on the March 31st, 2023 tornado outbreak, a storm that sparked a passion. So, some of you guys probably know what I mean by that. Some of you may not. But this is going to be, and I say this every time, but this really is going to be my biggest documentary yet, if all goes according to plan. So, don't expect it anytime soon. Oh my gosh, I made a horrible one of it. Yeah, I made like the worst video on the entire channel. Hold on, look at this. Oh my gosh.
When it comes to tornado outbreaks, there are so many examples you could list. You could talk about the December 15th, 2021 tornado outbreak. You could
Why did I mention that instead of December 10th?
talk about the March 24th, 2023 tornado outbreak. But my mind always goes back to March 31st, 2023. This is what March 31st, 2023. This is what really got me into the weather, okay? So on this day, there were 2 high risks of severe weather issued. One was in portions of southeast Iowa, northwestern Illinois, and northeastern...
You can see this kid looking down, bro. You can see him looking down at his phone.
Back in 2011 during...
Or not my phone,
people
my iPad.
that were left without power.
I was literally just reading off of Wikipedia. Gang, why did you bring that video up to me? That's gonna haunt me for the rest of my life now. Oh my gosh. Why did I bring it up and show you guys? Oh my gosh. Show you guys. That is crazy work. Well, anyway, now that we've watched that, see, Pembroke, Georgia, I don't know enough about to say anything, but from what I understand, it's really just your typical low India for Dixie tornado. That's not to say there's not cool stories from it. There's stories to be told from every tornado. But it was 195? Am I dumb? Huh. I thought it was 170. Okay. You learn something new every day. No, we're not talking about Ringgold. Anyway. I think that's going to be it for today, Chad, because I'm unfortunately going to have to go soon, so we might as well just cut it off now. I do want to thank you all for tuning in. There's a very low chance that we do go live for some severe weather coverage for tonight. Oh, no way. No way Abbeville's underrated. It's crazy. I wonder why you would say that. You know what? Before we hop off, let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Let's do what Andrew Griffiths accused me of cherry picking, quote unquote. Let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Let's keep saying the same thing over and over again, Davis. That's funny. Let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Yes, sir. D1 cherry pick. Let's go. Okay, contaminated, huh? But, crap. Okay, maybe I shouldn't do it like that. Do we want to look at the northern mode or the southern mode? We'll look at the northern mode. Alright. So, northern mode again, you've still got 3,000 surface cape. You've got 54 knots of shear, 51.3 cape. Lapse rates ranging from 6.5 to 8 Celsius per kilometer. Photograph looks decent, decently elongated. Storm Slinky turned at 78 degrees, kind of a weird angle there. Obviously, SARS analogs don't matter very much, but pretty impressive history there with this kind of setup. Our SRH values ranging anywhere from 250 to 300. Temperature to dew point ratio, beautiful. But those dew points just die in the higher levels of the atmosphere, and I think that's probably going to drive us a pretty intense hail threat. And that is what we have our new enhanced risk driven by, is that 30% hail threat. It is worth noting they did just issue a new mesoscale for the South Dakota mode. They already had one out for North Dakota, but they did just put one out for South Dakota now. This is mentioning the threat for hail potentially larger than softball size, damaging winds up to 80 miles an hour, and a couple of tornadoes, but it won't load. Too many people on the SPC website. Anyway. Holy cow, what is the beef that I missed? Alright, anyway, thank you all for watching. Gosh, dude. I will see you all in the next one.